Let me just rename this. I just opened up a new terminal here so that we can try to work with Git. So if you want the prettier to work, you might want to go and file your JS files to JSX if you didn't want to use this select language mode option. That's another option for you to make the prettier and other functions here that you might want to utilize. Okay. So what we're trying to do here, inside of the app directory, we wanted to create a page.jsx file. And let's try to rename this to JSX. And also, I think we should also try to rename this with JSX. Okay. And from there, let's save that. Will this now work if we just use, let's say, JavaScript only? Let's test that out. That doesn't seem to be working. I think you'll have to manually set that up in your settings. So let's just go back with JavaScript JSX. Let's see, JS H2. So that's working now. So now this page.jsx is going to be the root path to this website. Now let's try to test out creating an about.jsx here. If, for example, we wanted to go to this path inside of our about, will that work? So I think that will not work anymore. So what you have to do, you'll see it's telling us for this page could not be found. Let's try to create an about folder. So now let's try to go and drag this inside, and let's rename that page.jsx. So how will that be working now? Let's try to refresh. That seemed to work. So let's try to see. Let me just go back here. Can we just copy some of this? You would see this is a H1 about page. So it's rendering the page about with that about page. And if we try to go back to the root directory, we have that next JSS crash course. So most of our pages now will need to be in that folder, which is going to be the path. And then we just try to change the content inside of it. So now in this case, we just want to have an export default. I think we can have a default. Let's create a function about. Let's return. If I can type it correctly, let's have a div h1 about page. Let's go back to the browser. Let's see if that is working. That path is now working. So that is working. I'm just wondering why we are rendering those lines, but we'll try to find the solution to this. Will that still happen if we try to open this up on... Let me just open up my Google Chrome here. So we can see that this is quite a beneficial feature from Next.js. So we do have the page component for the home. We also have a layout component. So what this layout component allows us to do is to lay out all of the pages. If we have a lot of nav across all of the pages or a footer, let's say we want to have, you would see we have an HTML root element here. We have the body element. You would see that we can do it inside of this root layout. Now, if we wanted to have a custom layout in the About page here, we can just create a custom layout.jsx also inside of that. Let's say, for example, here, we do have the HTML. We could put here a navigation. Say we have a nav here. Now, if we try to go and inside of the navigation, let's have a UL here. Then let's have a list. Then let's have a anchor element that takes us to the About page. Let's have this first. So say we have home and about. What will that look like on our browser now? So we do have those getting rendered, right? If we go to the home, we also have those values inside of our home page here. What are these errors? Survey HTML to contain a matching nav in HTML. Okay. So I think that's because we need to have this not inside of there. Should have it here, right? I think that's the reason why that is happening. Let's see. Okay, did that solve the issue? Yep. And we do have that About page. And I think this is rendering because we have our, where did we put that? In here. So that's the reason why that's happening. But basically for the templatizing your page, if we wanted to maximize the use of the layout.jsx here. Now, what do we see here? It's a children inside of curly brackets. So we do have our root layout here. And we can see that this is a function. Then we have our children here. And we are importing a prop here. We do have an import prop here. And this is just basically a prop that we're importing. And this children is each of the individual pages. So we can see that this is going to be the home page and About page. We are rendering it inside of our root layout as a prop. Let's try this out again. Let's have another, just want to explore this a little bit further. So let's have a, let's say services folder. Then let's have another page.jsx. Let's see if this will be rendered. And let's go back to the browser. And let's just say I want to go to that services. What will be rendered on the services? So we don't get anything, but there's no error. Let's go back to this About page and let's call this services, for example. And let's have a services here. What will happen now? So we do see that there's the home About services, and we are currently on that route. So that children is just basically a prop that we're passing in. I think we can try to move this at the bottom. Let's refresh this. Now we have that services on top rather than the navigation being at the bottom. So if we wanted to set this up in some sort of way, let's just check also. What if we go to the About page? Now we have the About page on the top and the navigation at the bottom. And I think that will still be same if we try to go to about services and Next.js crash course here. We can see that we do have that h1 on top. So now let's just go and try to go back to the documentation. And let's search for, I think we can search in the docs. So the documentation looks pretty good. You would see it's telling us a lot of top level files. We have some ecosystem, package.json file, top level folders, like the app, pages public sourced. We have routing conventions. We have layout here. So we do have the layout.js. So it's pretty important that you try to read through the documentation. As you can see, it's really providing us with plenty of information. And we have the page JSX or TypeScript X. I think TSX is going to be for TypeScript. TSX extension. What is that? Extension. And that is a TypeScript file. Use TSX for files which contain JSX. Okay, so that's a combination of TypeScript and JSX. And if we try to click on this layout.jsx here, so you'll see we can see an example for a dashboard using the layout.TypeScript X combination of JSX, and we have a function dashboard layout. Then we have some section element, and then the children props. And we can see that there's this syntax for children. A root layout is the topmost layout in the root app directory. It is used to define the HTML and body tags and other globally shared UI, as you can see here. And it says a lot of information for us. Layout components should accept and use a children prop, as we've talked about earlier. Will be populated with the route segments that the layout is wrapping. This will primarily be the component of a child layout if it exists, or page, but could also be other special files like loading or error when applicable. So we do see that we can do some wrapping here for the children. We wanted to export the dashboard layout function here. So what happens if we try to copy this? If we wanted to go and test this out, what will happen if we have a layout.jsx here? I think it's not going to work that way. So we can see that there's this about in our, I think we'll have to do some, what error can we get from the browser if that happens? Do we get some, we have some syntax errors. Let's look at here. Export default function root layout. We have a function dashboard layout. Did I correctly copy the content? I think this is because this is a TypeScript. We can see TSX. That's why. If we just copy the root layout here, we do get to see that it is working, but what should we be using here? I think we can, it is, I think we can try to, can we return a section here? then pass in the props children, and that seems to be working properly. So we do see that that's running correctly. So we do have a root layout function, but most probably we would be having some section layout here, and that's still running without any errors. Okay, so we do see that this is working, and we're just currently exploring if we wanted to create a layout.jsx inside of the about section here. How do we make that possibly work? But for the meantime, let's just move forward with some more things to explore this framework or to explore Next.js here.